Sesame Street is a children's television show that seems like it's been around forever. With 48 seasons and over 4,000 episodes, the series has a huge and diverse history of material spanning many different iterations of shorts, skits, and segments. Naturally, with so much having been made for the show, some of its content has slipped through the cracks and remains lost. Not released on DVD, not posted online, and not available for public viewing. A lot of lost Sesame Street content is simply a result of the lack of preservation, and quite a bit of it isn't exactly historical or noteworthy. However, today's subject in particular does stand as a holy grail, not only for the Sesame Street lore, but also for the historical importance it has to the lost media scene. There have been quite a few times within Sesame Street's history when they feature celebrities or other famous characters on the show. These are usually memorable and quirky, bringing a little pop culture into the show. But there was one time when this idea of a celebrity crossover went horribly wrong. So wrong, in fact, that the episode itself was banned, never to be shown again. It all happened when the Wicked Witch of the West landed in Sesame Street. On February 10th, 1976, episode 847 of Sesame Street was aired for its first and only time. It features actress Margaret Hamilton reprising her role as the Wicked Witch from the Wizard of Oz film. The episode itself involved the Wicked Witch losing her broom while flying over Sesame Street, and having to interact with the residents in order to get it back. Naturally, as she's the Wicked Witch, the residents are cautious about her intentions and are hesitant to give it back. This results in the witch causing trouble, such as making it rain inside Mr. Hooper's store and threatening to turn Big Bird into a feather duster. Eventually, she uses a disguise as a trick to get her broom back, and then leaves Sesame Street. On paper, this seems like a relatively harmless and kinda cool crossover that's really interesting to hear about. However, this wasn't exactly the case for kids growing up in the 1970s who witnessed this episode of the series, and is the reason why it was shown once and only once on TV before being banned. The aftermath of this episode is perhaps more legendary than the episode itself, because for something like Sesame Street to get banned, you know something had to have gone really wrong, and it did. Apparently this episode pretty much traumatized the young viewers who watched it, and resulted in dozens of angry complaint letters from parents whose children were terrified of the witch and wouldn't watch the show anymore out of fear. Archives from the Children's Television Workshop hold some of the letters that were sent in, and include phrases such as "screams and tears" and "the threat of the witch's power remains in the children's eyes." Shortly after the episode was aired on TV, additional test screenings were conducted from March 1st through the 5th. Ultimately though, these tests were inconclusive, with the initial complaints being strong enough for the Children's Television Network to officially ban the episode from re-airing on TV, where it has not been seen since its original 1976 premiere. Now of course this leaves us wondering about where the episode is now and how we can see it. Fortunately for us, this topic isn't one that's unknown or not cared about. There's actually a lot of discussion and talk about it on various places around the web. A lot of research has already been conducted as to the whereabouts and release of the episode, but perhaps the most important comes from a post by Nitrate Nerd on the Lost Media Wiki forums. He emailed Craig Sheeman, the president of the Jim Henson Legacy, an organization which preserves his work. Craig confirms that the Sesame people actually have a copy of the episode and that it's in good hands. While this news might not come as a surprise, it was actually speculated for a time that all copies of the episode had been destroyed, so getting this confirmation is pretty reassuring. He goes on to state that he'll try and see if they'll do a Lost Sesame Street episode screening, in addition to another party who has connections in trying to get it released. This post is from July 2017, but unfortunately nothing has come of it since. Contact to Sesame themselves and Carol Spinney, who performed Big Bird and Oscar on the show, was also made, but there was no response from either. You might be wondering why exactly Sesame has such a tight grip on the episode, but we don't really have a real concrete answer about that. It seems to mostly stem from the fact that this episode was banned for a reason, Sesame wants to keep their name clean, and likewise don't really have anything to gain from releasing such an episode. What's even more unfortunate about this case is that we can't even really hope an old VHS recording exists, because VHS recording was almost non-existent when the episode aired. This is sort of like the perfect storm for an instance of lost media. Hopefully someday we'll get a chance to see such an interesting and controversial episode from a series like Sesame Street nonetheless, but until then, it'll remain a mystery.